Gracie Jiu-Jitsu rocks. Welcome to the Gracie Jiu-Jitsu Rocks podcast, a podcast dedicated to Gracie Jiu-Jitsu and all things Gracie, including self-defense, competition, anti-bullying, women's self-defense and empowerment, nutrition, and most especially, the people involved in Gracie Jiu-Jitsu. This podcast is for the average Joe. It's for anyone who practices, trains, teaches, or just loves to talk about or hear about Gracie Jiu-Jitsu. We'll explore the lives of Gracie Jiu-Jitsu practitioners, how they got involved in the art, and what effect it's had on their lives. So buckle up and enjoy the ride. Welcome to episode 90 of the Gracie Jiu-Jitsu Rocks podcast. As always, I'm your host, Marty Josie, and thanks for listening. Today, my guest will be Brian Beauchamp, and we'll get to that in just a moment, but before we do, let's start with our quote. And the quote is, "All greatness comes from an investment in time and the perfection of skills that render you great." And that's from John Danaher. Okay, Brian Beauchamp is an accomplished Judo and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, as well as a respected mixed martial arts referee and judge. After an outstanding 30-year-long career in Judo, Brian switched his focus to BJJ, where he has become one of the most successful masters and senior competitors of all time, particularly in the IBJJF circuit, where he's been Masters World Champion 9 times and counting. In the interview, he talks about his recent fundraising event he did for Firefighter Tolley, and he also talks about being a firefighter for many years himself as well. He talks about his long history in Judo, he and his brother, as well as how he got into BJJ and what that journey's been like for him. He shares what it was like winning the world title the first time as well as the latest time, and what those experiences have been like for him, and what he feels like has contributed to his high-level victories, not only in BJJ, but Judo, wrestling, and many other endeavors. He also tells a story of being robbed at gunpoint in Colombia, as well as who's had the biggest influence and impact on his life. So I know you're going to enjoy this interview. So without further ado, let's talk to Brian now. Okay, I'm speaking with Brian Beauchamp, Judo and Jiu-Jitsu black belt, world-class competitor, and professional MMA judge and referee. So welcome to the show, Brian.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure, sir. And man, you have done so much in the martial arts world, especially in Judo and Jiu-Jitsu, but others as well. And I want to talk about all of that. But before we get into that, let's talk about something you recently did for a cause that's near and dear to your heart. And I'm speaking of the recent fundraising event for Firefighter Tolley and the Fire and Drums Foundation. So tell us a little bit about that, please, sir.
Just on the weekend, I live in Ontario, Toronto, Ontario, Canada. And on the weekend, I've been a firefighter in the city of Toronto for 27 years. And a friend of mine that I have competed against in NAGA and other friends, he's a fellow black belt, a jiu-jitsu black belt. They wanted to fundraise some money. Billy Tolley, who was a FDNY firefighter, also a volunteer in a smaller town, died in the line of duty. He was 42 years old, had a wife and 2 kids. Died in the line of duty during an accident at a fire call, and part of his legacy is to him and his brother and him created a foundation to raise money for other firefighters or service members, basically military, that had lost a parent in the line of duty, and to help the family get through difficult times. And some people have insurance, but other people don't, and things are very expensive nowadays. So certainly, they had someone with a judo background. That was going to going to help them with a seminar, but that person ended up backing out, and he had known me for years, and knew I was a firefighter. He asked me if I would be considered doing it, and so I said it would be an honor for me to do it. Obviously, 9/11 has a over 100-year history. FDNY has over 100-year history, that department, and they lost a lot of members during 9/11, and anything I do to give back would be an honor. So I went down there last weekend, flew to New York City, and went out to Long Island, where I did basically a private jiu-jitsu seminar, and all the money that was raised, along with some T-shirts that were sold by the family, was given to another FDNY family who had lost their brother in service. So I think we raised $3,000 or $4,000 in one day for the family. So it was a great opportunity to look at a different aspect of the country. I've been in New York many times, but not to Long Island. So it's a great, the jiu-jitsu community generally comes together when it comes to raising money. And I've just tried to show, there was 5 or 6 black belts on the mats, plus 30 other students. But my strength is in marrying the two sports, as you and I talked about, the judo and the jiu-jitsu, and that's one of the main reasons I was there.
Yeah, what a great opportunity. My heart goes out for Billy and his family, as well as all the firefighters that have experienced loss of their brothers and comrades. And man, it's such a incredible and demanding line of work, and I have the utmost respect for sure for all firefighters. So great that you were able to combine your love for judo and jiu-jitsu and being a firefighter and impact so many people through that. So respect to you for that, sir.
Thank you. I mean, I wasn't there in my mind. I wasn't there just for the jiu-jitsu. I've been a firefighter for 27 years, as I said, and I've gone through my own difficult times with some of the stresses of the job and losses that I've seen. And some of the message that we're trying to get out was not just teaching, but also talking about post-traumatic stress. And, when people pass, there's still people that are left behind that have to deal with the aftermath, and not the same as coming back from war. There's a price that's going to be paid, yes. Whether you have any physical injuries or not. There's always a price, and people have to always remember, if you're emergency services or you serve in the military, you do not come back the same person, and there's a price that's going to be taken, and it's really taken from your soul, and trying to deal with the things you experience and the things that you see, and try and process that. Some of the grief that you deal with is very difficult, and a lot of people need help, and those things are, instead of shying away from them, I think it's important to engage and talk about these things.
Yes, I agree 100%. It's such an important subject, and one that's not understood near enough or given enough focus, for sure. So good for you, as well as others out there that are raising awareness to that important situation. Now, you also won the title as world's toughest firefighter. So that had to be a tough thing, because firefighters in general are a very tough lot. So how does one achieve that title?
Well, actually, I was on a team. It wasn't an individual thing. I was on a team of 5 guys, and that was in the 90s. We went to the World Firefighter Games, and I was on a team from before the city of Toronto became one department. It was like boroughs, just like the boroughs of New York, and I was on a team that we won the world's toughest firefighter. We beat 18 teams from around the country, and that's all fire related. When you're as far as running up staircases and doing different athletic evolutions. Obviously, it's all timed, and you combine your 3 best athletes, your 3 best times out of your 5 athletes, and then that time goes against other countries. So we actually beat it was in Canada. We beat the Australians, and I think Belgium had a super strong team, but the number 1 team, the number 2 team behind us was Australia, and they're obviously, with their weather being a lot better than Canadian weathers, they're a very athletic country. So it's very hard to beat them. And it's part of a team concept, but I did that certainly when I was a lot younger. It's a great time to keep athletic and full of energy for your job, because you depend on your health and fitness for your job. If you don't have some fitness behind you, and you're climbing up 15 and 20-story buildings, staircases, carrying 100 pounds of equipment, you're gonna have a heart attack before you get to the fire.
I can imagine.
So it's important to keep active.
Well, I know you got to be proud of that title, because that had to be grueling to be part of that team and come out so well. So, Brian, your martial arts resume is simply incredible, and you've done so much and been so successful, having won numerous judo and jiu-jitsu competitions at the highest levels, including 9 times IBJJF Masters World Champion. So that's incredible. And I want to talk to you about all that in just a moment and what you feel like is kind of responsible for that success. But to lead up to that, let's just go back and get a little bit of your background. How did you get started in martial arts, and where did that take you through today?
I mean, I grew up in Toronto, Ontario, Canada, with 3 other brothers, and my parents got divorced when I was young. I was only 8 or 9, so my mother took us down to the local YMCA and put us into a judo program, because it was, being a Canadian, obviously a lot of people in Canada play ice hockey, but ice hockey is very expensive, so she couldn't afford it. She took us down to the local YMCA and put us in the YMCA program for judo, and we just sort of stuck with us. Like I said, I think I was 9 years old at the time, and we got better and better at it. And eventually, with my 3 other brothers, we went to local competitions and got up to the sort of regional level. We're regional champions, and then eventually, at one point after years, we got to be on the provincial team, which is sort of like a state team, in the United States, where it's. And then at one point, we were in the top 3 in the state. So eventually we qualified and made the Canadian national team. And to be on the Canadian national judo team, we had to move out of our province to Quebec, and we lived in Montreal. I lived in Montreal with my 2 brothers for 10 years, and I was on the Canadian national team. My brother, all 3 of us were on the same weight division, and obviously only one of us can go to the Olympics, so we sort of used the 2 older brothers' experience to get the youngest one, because we figured he had the best chance to go to the Olympics. So we just pursued that, and then my youngest brother, Glenn Beauchamp, went to the 1984 Olympics in Los Angeles, where he fought for a bronze medal. Nice. And lost on a decision. And then he went to Seoul, the 1988 Olympics in Seoul, Korea. So he was a 2-time Olympian. And all 3 of us were in the top 3 or 4 in the country. Plus, my brother was a 2-time Olympian. So, yeah, we were very successful. Had a great judo career, but judo, is very political. Like most sports are political, and it's expensive, and it takes a lot of money to travel around the world and get good. We went to Japan and France and all kinds of countries to train at. So we've trained all over the world in judo. And then after my brother was only 27 years old after his second Olympic Games, and he retired at 27 years old as an athlete and went into business as a businessman, because he had an economics degree. So my other brother followed him into the family business, in the stainless steel business, and then I ended up joining the fire department. And after I got established, I took a break after I retired from judo. I took a break for about 5 years, just getting my life in order, and then I ended up later switching into jiu-jitsu. But the judo taught us a lot of not only just the sport, but it taught us a lot of life lessons, because you depend on each other as a team, but you're fighting as an individual. And judo has been around for over 100 years. It does have a certain mentality to it as far as the ethics and the belief system and what's important and what isn't. And I think those skill sets that we learned, not just physically but mentally from the sport, really helped us carry on as human beings and basically form some of the belief systems that we have today.
It sounds like it certainly gave you a great foundation in a lot of ways. How did this lead to jiu-jitsu?
Well, I was actually with my family on vacation in Florida, and I didn't know a lot about jiu-jitsu. I ended up renting a house in Florida for a month, and I like to keep active. So it's actually, I think it was in Cape Coral, Florida. I walked down to this corner one day and I saw a jiu-jitsu club, and I went into the instructor and said, "Can I come in here and practice a little bit?" Obviously, because it's with a gi, and I wore a gi all my life. So I just put a white belt on, because obviously I was a black belt in judo already. Put a white belt on, started from the scratch, and it's similar because there's some throws and takedowns, and there's obviously submissions and judo, and a lot of it was very similar. So I figured, I could cross over. Some of the things are very transferable, the skill sets, So and I love rolling around and grappling. So I just practiced there for a month. Pretty well every 5 days a week, I went for a month while I was in Florida, and I ended up getting my blue belt at the end of the month in 1 month.
Nice.
So that's how I started. I mean, I just started in Florida. And then when I got my blue belt, I thought, I knew there was less belts in jiu-jitsu, but they're harder as far as the gradings were harder. After that, I ended up calling a friend of mine who was a U.S. Olympian in judo. His name's Tamak Johnson-Ono. I think he's an 8th degree. And he was a BJJ black belt. He lives in New York City, a good friend of mine. And I asked him, how he got his black belt, because that was sort of the way I shifted. Maybe I can get a black belt one day in jiu-jitsu. And he said, well, I got my black belt in Brazil. I go to Brazil every summer. So I said, next time you go, I'd like to go with you. Because, obviously as judo, the source of judo is Japan. The source for jiu-jitsu is Brazil. And I thought it can't be a better place than to go into the source. So I went. The first time I went to Brazil was with an American, Tamak Johnson from New York, a judo fellow, and we went there for a month in the summertime, and that's how I started my connection to Brazil.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. And I know you had some really great training down there. How did it evolve from there, and what led you into your competitive career?
Well, I had to, it was a little bit difficult at the beginning because you have to sort of deprogram yourself if you're a judo player. A lot of people think it's an easy transition from judo to jiu-jitsu, but there are a lot of judo and jiu-jitsu judo people that haven't done that good switching to jiu-jitsu. And I think some of that comes from your mindset. I mean, letting go of your ego and taking it as a new adventure, it can be very difficult for some people. So try to deprogram, something you've learned for years and years, just the sort of the process of judo, and then trying to look at it from a jiu-jitsu point of view, can be difficult for some people. So I went every summer for 5 years to make sure I was getting the constant message. And now at this point in my life, I've been there 10 times. I've been a real traveling and training. So I know the culture good, and I know I've got a better understanding of the sport. But as I said, a lot of people haven't been successful. But I was lucky that I could let go of some of the mindset I had, and I had to try and marry the two. I mean, I knew time was against me because I never started till I was in my 40s. It's not somebody could teach me when I was 10. And so I thought there was literally millions of moves in jiu-jitsu. How am I gonna bring what I know from judo and bring it over to another sport and be successful, and also be respected and be legitimate, by what I do and what I know. So I knew time was against me. So I thought there's 1,000 guards out there. There's 1 million YouTube videos, as you know. And I can't learn all that stuff. I said time won't be on my side. So I said, what do I need to know, and what do I is sort of nice to know. And I looked at a lot of the guards, because there was a lot of exotic guards out there. And I said, well, I need to know how to kill every guard, but I don't narrowly need to know how to master every guard. Because when people throw the exotic guards at me, I need to know how to stop it. I knew I had to always go to my strength. Obviously all fights start standing, as we say. Even in jiu-jitsu, you have to engage. You can't just sit.
Right.
So I said that can work to my advantage. So if I bring my gripping over from judo, because gripping, if you know how to grip, you can win a lot of fights. So bring my gripping over. I had to be careful on my stance, but I figured I have to. I don't have to throw people through the floor like you do in judo. You have to throw them as hard as you can. It didn't matter how hard I threw somebody. I still only got 2 points for it. So I had to pull back my throwing, and just the most important thing was that I would knock people down and get to a sort of dominant position. So that was one of the biggest adjustments I had to make at the beginning. Mm-hmm. Don't worry about hammering people through the floor. Just worry about taking them down and getting to a dominant position. And, obviously if I get another one of my mindsets was, if I get 2 points for the takedown and 3 points for the pass, I'd be up 5-0 before I hit the mat. pretty well. So then I know the most dominant moves in jiu-jitsu were somebody mounting you or taking your back, which was worth 4 points. 4 points was the maximum scoring in jiu-jitsu, unless you submitted somebody. So I thought, if I'm up 5-0 before I hit the mat, even if somebody does take my back, obviously I'm going to make sure that doesn't happen if possible, but I could still win 5-4. So I had to come up with a bit of a strategy on how I could bring what I do over. So I've always been a proponent when I teach seminars or not, that you need, the number one thing you need to work on first is your defense. Problem is that in jiu-jitsu, a lot of people fall in love with the sexy part of jiu-jitsu, which is the offense.
It's true.
And they fall in love with submitting people, and they watch too much TV. They watch the UFC, and they watch too many videos of all the exotic moves, and they have it backwards. I teach the opposite way. The number one thing I emphasize with anyone I teach is defense first. And anybody can tell you, whether it's football or hockey or any sport, you win a lot of championships by having great defense.
Mm-hmm, for sure.
So I go out of my way to emphasize defense first, because a great defense allows you to stay in the game. And I always say, even when I taught in New York on the weekend, defense is its own reward. That's an acronym I say, and that just means defense is its own reward, which means if you have a great defense, it allows you to stay in the fight to the 4th and the 5th and the 8th and the 9th and the 10th minute. If you don't have a good defense and you have offense and you can't execute your offense, then you're in trouble. So I said, your offense, I always say defense, you can get very good in a year or two if you know what you're doing or you have a good teacher, but offense takes a lifetime. I'm in my 50s now, and I'm still working to this day to get better offensively. So
wow, that's great. So
I take it from the reverse point of view. I teach them as much as I can about how to defend. And with great defense, as you can appreciate, comes confidence.
Yes, I agree.
If you're a great defensive athlete, you can say, no matter what somebody does to me, I believe this guy can't get me. And if that is a confidence booster, because that's when your offense kicks into play. If you're scared because you think I can submit people, but I also I'm not that good defensively, then you've always got that in your subconscious. Mm-hmm. So I sort of approach jiu-jitsu in the opposite. How do I defend the footlocks? How do I defend the knee bars? How do I defend the submissions? And how do I just stay in basically a safe, a good position all the time? So that's what I worked on. My number one thing is that when I switched over from judo to jiu-jitsu was defense first.
Wow. I love that, because I agree with you. It's when you feel like you're really solid with defense, it does affect your mindset and your anxiety level, your breathing, everything, because you can relax more if you don't feel as threatened. If you feel like you've got decent offense, but it could go either way. They could get you offensively, or you get them, depending on who does it first and better. Then it's a lot different mindset, and there's a lot more stress involved for you. You're chasing a submission, but you're also worried about submissions a lot more if you don't feel confident with your defense. So I think it's a really sound way to go, for sure.
I think a lot of people, they make a lot of mistakes the way they learn. That's why I emphasize defense. And I think that, as I said, defense is its own reward, but you have to, obviously you want to be relaxed, even if someone's on your back. People make mistakes because they abandon positions too early. The minute they think they don't respect attacks. Some people, they wait too long. I have students that come up to me and they say, Professor, how do I get out of this? I said, I know it's a cliche and they don't want to hear it, but I say it's almost too late. Well, the thing is, you didn't respect the attack at the beginning, and that's why you're in the hole you're in.
Right.
So I always say, respect any attack that someone does to you and defend it right away. Don't wait. So you are going to get into a bit of a routine where you're defending because the other guy might be attacking, but eventually the guy can't continue to attack all the time. So that's when you have a great defense. Here's my opportunity now. I've defended his best attacks. Here's my opportunity to turn the tide. And that was sort of my mentality.
That's great. And it certainly, obviously, has worked out well for you. You've succeeded on the highest levels and medaled in so many types of competitions, including Sambo, Greco-Roman, and freestyle wrestling, Judo and Jiu-Jitsu. And I think I read where with the IBJJF, you were on that circuit and you spent 9 consecutive years without conceding a single point. And that is just amazing. So
Actually, it's a bit of an error. I've at the World Championships, the World Masters Championships, I won it 9 times.
Okay.
But it was over 5 or 6 years. But it is correct. I've never had a point scored on me at the World Masters.
Wow, that's amazing. That is amazing. Wow.
So I won, because obviously sometimes I fight my own division and open weight. So that's two titles in 1 year.
Wow.
Right. So I've won it. Yeah, I've won it nine times, but I've never had a point scored on me, and I think I've counted the number. It's been about 35 matches. But you're fighting black belts. You got to remember they're all Pan American medalists and world medalists, right?
Yeah, amazing, man. Congrats on all that success. Let's talk about 2 of your championships. What was it like the first one you won? What sticks out in your mind about winning that first time? And then let's talk about the latest one, the 9th. What was it like, and how are they different for you?
Good question. I mean, the first one I had won the Pan Ams. I won the Pan Am Championship 6 times, but I'd never fought at the Worlds. And so I remember the first time I won it, I was emotional because, as you get successful in life, I think it goes for all of us. It's not unique to me. We get a lot of haters and naysayers because people can't do it themselves. They like to beat other people down. So I know my first one, I remember it to this day because I felt a certain amount of gratitude and a certain amount of accomplishment because, just people saying you can't do things in life. I mean, you can't. I tell my son or I tell anybody, any athlete that, your first battle is with yourself in life, believing in yourself. I said, do not listen to anybody that says you can or can't do anything in life. It's all up to you. How much do you want to pay to get what you want in life? If you're willing to pay a high price, you can do it. But if you're looking for shortcuts and an easy way, then you're probably not going to get there. And my first one when I won, I ended up submitting the guy in the finals. But yeah, I mean, I was a little bit emotional about it, I think, because just because it was the highest thing that I had done in jiu-jitsu at the time, and just a sense of accomplishment. I mean, you can only gloat for about a day because when you get home the next day, everything's back to reality. So I mean, it's good that you set a goal for yourself and you get out there and accomplish it. Still makes you feel good for a day. On the last one of my greatest accomplishments in jiu-jitsu was after I'd won 5 or 6 times, I actually went down an age category 1 year because I wanted to prove that I was, I had some good skill. And 2 or 3 years ago, I went down a 5-year age category at the World Masters. Oh, wow. And I ended up beating. I won my own division, beat the world champion from Brazil, 3-0, and then I went open weight and beat. I ended up having a great match with Chris Howder.
Yes,
one of the Dirty Dozen. I fought him in the finals of the open weight in the finals. So that was a great accomplishment for me because I went down an age category and won double gold at the Worlds. No points scored on me. So again,
fantastic.
Yeah, I mean that was a great thing. And then my last one, I won this year. I was battling some injuries, but couldn't really tell anybody about them. And I won I didn't have enough. I wasn't healthy enough to go in open weight, so I just won my own category this year. But fought the Brazilian national champion in the finals, beat him 2-0. But I didn't fight very good. I didn't think I fought very good at all because I had some problems with my legs and I couldn't train properly. But that being said, I did. You feel good about it. Sometimes in life, you don't have your best game, and if you can still struggle through it and do well, it's almost better than when you're in a peak performance because you didn't have your best your best game, but you still managed to be gritty. And
Yeah, that's an interesting point because, I mean, all of those were incredible accomplishments and I'm sure all peak experiences in their own way. The first one, being the first time and new as far as the worlds, that victory had to be sweet. But then when you have to really battle through a lot more adversity and challenge to get there and to win it, it's got to be super sweet as well.
They're all unique in their own way. And, everybody, like I said, I'm not unique to anybody. Everybody has hills and mountains and valleys that they go up and down. And they try and get to what their end goal is. And I mean, there's nothing that I do that's magical. I don't think. I just work hard. I work really hard. I train hard. But my best weapon for sure is my mind, because if you can do elite judo, high-end judo, like a world-class judo, you can almost do anything, I swear, because it's a very difficult sport. Wrestling and judo are both great Olympic sports. And coming over to jiu-jitsu, you've got that mindset, how to really work hard and be mentally tough. A lot of people I find, I've met many great athletes in jiu-jitsu. A lot of them are great in the club, and they're just great jiu-jitsu players. But when they compete, and I think you're familiar with this, they just don't perform as good because they've got all the stress and the pressure of the white lights and the noise and the thousands of people watching, and the pressure of beating good guy after good guy. Now, not everybody handles that pressure well. I mean, some people that might be just gritty handle it well, and they just get in there and get dirty. Or other people might be a finesse player, but they just sometimes they collapse because of the competition. I mean, we have three things that we have to compete I always tell people, you have to compete with yourself first of all, and that's a very tough battle. But you also have to manage the other person that you're fighting, and that's difficult because you don't know what he's going to do when he's trying to beat you. But a big thing that a lot of people don't worry about, emphasize, is they have to battle the clock. And the clock can be your friend if you're winning the fight, but it can be your enemy if you're losing, because you're running out of time. And those are things you need to practice and learn how to manage. Time management is one thing, but also managing yourself, and that may be the most difficult problem because of the third thing, which is the other person. That's one thing that is very difficult to manage. So that's the thing you have the least amount of control over. So those are three things I work on a lot.
That's great. And any one of those can make or break you for sure in a match. And when you talk about competing with yourself or mastering yourself, a lot of people, like you said, get blown away when they go into an environment of competition because if it's new, everything can just be overwhelming. And you see this in the UFC. When fighters are world-class caliber and great condition, but then they just get the adrenal dump. They're just, spent almost immediately or very early into it because just the mental overwhelm. So I think someone like you who started very early in in judo, or other people who start early in wrestling and get used to, make peace with that competition environment, I think that really goes a long way in managing and dealing with that pressure.
Well, I just tell people, because some people do ask me specifically about my mindset, how do I approach it? Why am I relaxed? And I said, well, last year the World Masters were in Las Vegas. As you know, they're always there, and there's, it's over 3 days. There's 3,000 people there. I said, well, when I go there, in my mind, there's no one else there but me. When I step out on the mat, I don't look around at the thousands of people. There's only me and the other guy, and you have to have tunnel vision, and you have to have laser focus if you're going to compete. It can't be about looking over at your girlfriend and your mom in the crowd. It can't be your coach. You can't be. If you're listening to your coach at the World Championships, it's too late. You should be able to. It's important to be an independent thinker. If you can't think on your own at the world level, where I don't even really need to be coached, then you're not ready, or it's going to be a lot harder. Let's put it that way. So I've been to Brazil and competed with nobody around me that spoke a word of English, and I went out there all alone. Wow. So you got to be, realize what your game plan is, realize what you have to do, be honest with yourself about what you're good at and what you're not good at. And that's the hard part. A lot of people aren't honest with themselves about what your strengths and weaknesses are. and don't emphasize what other guys do good. It's really what you do good and executing your game plan. So, the mental, we keep coming back to the mental part, but you can see how important it is.
Yeah, that's great advice. Just being laser focused and tuning out everything else and just really focusing on you and what you're there to do and staying in that powerful state of mind and ready. It's great.
Well, it's you got to think of it this. I just say to my students, it's white noise. Everything around you is white noise. You got to beat the guy in front of you. You got 5 minutes, and you can't concentrate for 4 minutes and 50 seconds. You have to concentrate for 5 minutes, and you can rest when you're dead.
I like that.
So you better not come out and say I could have gone harder. That's the last thing I want to hear as a coach. I could have gone harder. Yeah. So get dialed in, and while you're there, give everything you got for 5 minutes, and win or lose, you've done your best. But there's only one winner, obviously. But that being said, you don't have to be an Olympic athlete to have an Olympic moment in life.
I love that. That's
so
wonderful.
I mean, so I didn't go to the Olympic Games. I went as a personal coach, but I didn't go as a fighter. My brother went to the Olympics, but I've had Olympic moments, and that's what my day was when I had to be at my best. So those are important, and I try and tell people, everyone has a dream. You can do it. I said, but you got to get serious about what you're doing. If you're doing a half-ass and you're coming up with excuses and you're already preparing to lose and have all your excuses in the door. I owe it to when I'm away from my family and away from friends, and I'm in the gym 5 days a week preparing, and I've spent $150 to register and $1,000 to go to Las Vegas or wherever I'm competing. Don't you think I owe it to myself and my training partner to be at my best? I do. Or I've cheated them, and I've cheated myself.
Right.
So I'm not going to Las Vegas for a vacation when it's 120 degrees. So my idea is to go down there, and I got to keep my eye on why I'm there, my head on why I'm there, and that is to give it everything I got, win or lose. So that people don't, that's a learned. I think that's a learned skill also. A learned skill set is the focus and the determination what you need, not just the running millions and millions of drills. There's a lot more to jiu-jitsu than just drilling.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think anyone who makes it to the extreme top level and is successful has to have that, has to be very unique in their level of mental focus and ability to just do it to that degree.
I mean, the thing is that you don't have to be. I remember I taught a seminar in South America. I was in South America teaching a jiu-jitsu seminar, and the guy asked me in Spanish, what can I say on the flyer? And I said, so I tried to come up with a little bit of Spanish, and I said, what can we name the seminar? And I said well, I know the culture is a little bit different here, Spanish, in South America as opposed to Canada, the United States. And I just said, I want you to translate this in Spanish for me and put it on the poster. He said, okay, what do you want me to say? And I said, how to beat people better than you. Mm. And that's what he put on the poster.
Intriguing in any language, right?
Yes.
For sure. For sure. So again, props to all the success you've had, the world stage and all the competitions that you've been successful with. Now, you've also trained as a professional MMA ref and judge, right? You trained with Big John McCarthy and Mario Yamasaki, Herb Dean, and others. So tell us a little bit about that experience.
Well, I mean, I've got certified as a referee, and when the UFC started getting bigger, I thought it would be a good transition for me because of my background. I was a wrestler, national Ontario champion of wrestling and judo and jiu-jitsu, double black belt. So I thought the hardest part about officiating MMA is understanding the grappling portion. The striking, I think, is for the average referee. That's why you get boxing referees. They understand striking, but they don't make great MMA referees because they don't understand the grappling. That's such a huge component. Now, I find it easier to go the opposite way because I had such a strong grappling background, but I wasn't that familiar with the striking. I started with MMA matches that were predominantly grapplers, and then I graduated to to guys that were, elite strikers, and then you can, to a point where I could take on referee grapplers and strikers. So it's a process. I think that, there are a lot of referees courses out there, but I don't think a lot of them, they're just courses, no different than anything else. A 2-day course doesn't make you an official. I mean, you need to be mentored to be a very good referee. And mentoring, like many things in life, not just to be an MMA referee, is it's hard to find good mentors in life in anything we do, any subject matter. Mentoring is a lost art. So I think to be efficient, mentoring was the key. And that I had one of the best mentors in the world, and it wasn't one of the guys in the UFC. Actually, it was a guy named Dale Koparchuk from Alberta. He was on the ABC Rules Committee, and he understood the rules and how they were formed and as they changed. And he just interpreted a lot of. He believed in me, first of all, number one, but number two, he understood the fight game very well. So, I mean, I think even some of the top UFC referees, they make mistakes all the time. It's either glossed over and not addressed. But I see mistakes when I watch fights all the time. But it's also political too. I don't think anybody knows anything about MMA knows that MMA in general is very political, right?
Absolutely. Is
Is
there anything that you think the average person doesn't know or would be surprised to learn about either the training or just that world of MMA judging and reffing?
Well, I mean, the problem with judging is it's very, it's how you interpret what you're watching. And that's why they have 3 judges instead of 1, because 3 people have 3 different opinions. And right, so people do generally, there's no doubt there's criteria that you have to follow. But even in the criteria, when you watch the UFC today, even though the criteria is somewhat standardized, you can see how judges, when you look at the scoreboards, even today, here we are 2018, and you look at the scoring today, sometimes you just look at the scoring, you can't understand how they saw what you saw, or how they interpret it. So I think some of it comes from your background. Everybody has a different background and different influences, and they look at the sport differently. That's why we get decisions. We get split decisions. I've even seen UFC judges. I've had one guy gave it 30-27. You've seen this many times. 30-27 for one fighter, and another UFC judge gave it 30-27 for the opposite fighter. I've seen that. And that's one guy saying, I see this guy winning all 3 rounds, and another judge saying, I see this guy winning the other 3 rounds.
Yeah, I mean, it is very subjective, and I don't know if there's a perfect answer. I don't know if there's a perfect answer to that. People are always going to run it through their own filter, like you said, and see it the way they see it.
They run it through their filter. I mean, and then you've got the press. The press sees it another way. Well, 99% of the press has never even put a tracksuit on.
Right. That's true.
I remember once I did an interview, and they asked me. I judged at one of the UFCs in Toronto, and it was Karen Bryant in one of her interviews asked me why. She said my judging was controversial, and I said it was a split decision. A split decision. So I said, it was the John Jones Alexander Gustafsson. That wasn't that match, but that was the fight that I was one of the judges at. And when you have a split decision, you're only disagreeing with one round. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Only one round you see different from another. It's not 3 rounds; it's 1 round. So, I mean, there's so many examples of judges that judge all the time. I don't know if you remember Jeff Blatnick. Do you remember Jeff Blatnick?
Definitely.
Jeff Blatnick was, he's passed unfortunately, but he was one of the originators, as you know, of the UFC and the rules set. I think he works with John McCarthy on some of the original rules. And Jeff Blatnick, a lot of people don't know this, but he said, if you look up in some of the websites, he said he scored more 10-10 rounds than any judge in UFC history. So here's a guy that started, was one of the originaters, definitely a founder, there's no doubt about it. But when you look at how many 10-10 rounds he scored, that means you're basically saying that there's nothing in a round that happened that you can determine how one guy won the round or another. So I remember a lot of times we've been told by the commission, you have to. We're paying you money, so we want you to make a decision on who won the round. Or if you don't make a decision, why do we have you here? Mm. I mean, a monkey might as well press a button. He can decide who won the round. So if you, when I was taught to make a decision on a round. So there are 10-10 rounds. It is in unified rules, but it is there, just as a 10-7 round is. But a 10-7 round, if it's that bad, where you scored a 10-7 round, the guy must have got the beat out of him, basically.
For sure.
And it's so bad. If you scored a 10-7 round, in my opinion, the referee probably hasn't done his job. He should have stopped it by then. Yeah. The guy got beat up so bad. So it's one of those things in unified rules where the 10-7 round is there for complete, utter dominance, but the 10-10 round's there too. And you're basically saying that you can't, and you're a professional judge, and you can't, in your mind, decide who won a round. So, I mean, is that the type of judge you want all the time? I mean, the criteria is there, and then you've got your skill set that you're looking at, and you should be able to make a decision. That's sort of my mindset. Or why are you there? Why are we paying you? So, I guess that being said, I only used Jeff Blatnick as an example. It wasn't a criticism. It was just an example of a guy that was an original who scored a lot of 10-10 rounds. And so, I mean, it's funny the way you look at it, but like I said, I was the opposite, where I've never scored a 10-10 round. I make a decision on who I think won the round.
Interesting. It's a very interesting subject for sure, and how it all plays out and influences the whole fight game. Let's change gears for a minute, and I read a little bit of I think it was a Facebook post of yours a while back about you being robbed at gunpoint. I believe it's in Colombia. So tell us what was up with that story.
Yeah, I was refereeing some MMA fights in Medellin, Colombia, about 2 months ago. I've been down there 2 or 3 times to do seminars, jiu-jitsu seminars, and work some other fights. And obviously, it's South America is a different animal. Obviously, it was Medellin was the most dangerous city in the world 20 years ago during the Pablo Escobar days. But it's changed quite a bit. But I have friends that are Canadian that live in Medellin because of one of my friends that's married a Colombian girl who's a pilot down there, and so it's a great chance to go through different environments. One reason I love going to these foreign countries, I refereed in China and all in different countries, is because a lot of times you have fighters that don't speak any English, and I'm an English referee, or I speak English, and the 2 fighters I've had even before in China, where one guy spoke Chinese, and another guy spoke Russian. So you're really going down to the basics as a referee. Are my hand signals correct? Am I making myself clear? And you're basically trying to use a few words that are common, but it's a great challenge as an official working in some of these countries, like I said, where there's not only a language barrier, but just the culture is different, right from the crowd to where even the fight styles and the way they fight. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I find those experiences great because you just learn a lot. You're just always learning a lot. And I was down there to referee, like I said, a big fight card in Medellin. I landed at the airport, and I said I'd been down there 5 or 6 times, and I took a taxi from Medellin Airport, which lands in Rio Negro, which is on a mountaintop. And then you got to drive for about 45 minutes over a mountaintop into a valley where Medellin is. And, still to this day, it's still dangerous. Obviously, cocaine is still a big product that's exported. And I was in the military for 7 years, so I had a lot of, surveillance experience, counter surveillance experience. And sure enough, just like they do the hits in the old, Pablo Escobar days, and I stopped at a red light in a taxi. I had my iPhone in my hand, and a guy pulled up. I was stopped at a light, and I was boxed in. There was taxis in front of me, behind me, and at the side, because you're all boxed in at a red light when all the cars gather together. And I heard a tap, tap, tap at the window, and I was sitting right beside the window in the back seat, and I looked to my right, and there's a guy 2 guys on a motorcycle, one driver and one guy in the back, and the guy's pointing a handgun right at my face, about 8 inches from my face, and screaming at me in Spanish, basically saying he's going to kill me. and he wants my phone and my money. So I looked, did about in about 1 second. I looked around. I knew I had no way to get out of there, no ways of egress. You can't really do much. And if I got shot there, being a firefighter for 27 years, I've been in a lot of medical. I knew if I got shot there, I could bleed out fast. And me trying to get medical attention as speaking English, and I don't speak Spanish, I'd be dead. So I just rolled the window down, handed the guy my iPhone, my watch off my wrist, and I had some $20 or so in my hand that I was going to pay the taxi driver. And I ended up handing everything over, and taxi driver sort of spoke up a little bit, and he just screamed at him that he was going to shoot him. And then handed over my stuff, and then thank God they left and just drove away. But it sort of saved my ass a little bit that I had my wallet, my Canadian passport, obviously was still in my bag. So it was a little heart wrenching, but at least I got out of it alive.
Yeah, well, that's the important thing, right? You get out of there alive.
My friend that lives in Canada, he had told me that he lives in Medellin now. He told me that a month before, a tourist had been basically, there's two tourists. One of them had just resisted, and they shot and killed him, and another guy didn't resist, but he basically said in Spanish, just calm down to the guy, and they still shot him. So he said, you don't know whether the guys are on drugs or what, but they're not going to mess around with you there, and they're not going to find the guys once they shoot you. So, you can't take any chances. I mean, luckily I kept calm enough that I gave him what I had, and he left, and I got away there. I got out of there alive.
Well, it's interesting how you quickly assessed and had so many things running through your mind, with bleeding out and what medical care there would be and all these different things, and then it probably seemed like, time stood still, but you made that quick decision. And of course the correct decision is anything that's going to keep you alive. So, yeah,
I mean, my phones were $700 or $800, the iPhones, but still, like I said, it just, these guys, you don't know whether they're coked up or they're on dope or what, but they're certainly not going to hesitate to shoot me. So, I also did the, a threat assessment in your mind quickly. You got to remember where you are. You're in South America, and so, you hate to say it, but life is a lot cheaper down there. I mean, and I mean that respectfully. It's just that it is what it is. And the thing is that one mistake, and like I said, I would have been shot, and who knows where I would have shot, whether I would have made it or not. But yeah, I just hopefully, thank God, looking back, I made the right decision. But I got out of there and ended up refereeing the fights the next night, visited my friends, and just tried to go on with it the next day the best I could, and then that was the end of it.
Wow. Well, thank God that you made it out alive and are here to talk about it. So awesome. Yeah. So who's had the biggest impact or influence on your life? And that can be professionally or personally, Brian.
Professionally, personally, I'd say personally, I'd say one of the biggest influences in my life, I know it's a bit of a cliche, has been my mother, though. My father wasn't really an athlete per se. It was my mother that put all four of us in combative sports. And, she just passed away 6 months ago.
Sorry for your loss.
Thank you. Actually, while I was in Las Vegas, I got a phone call after I won the Worlds.
Oh, wow.
And flew home the next day. She passed away. But she's had a great influence on me. She was a tiger. My mother was a pit bull. She wouldn't. She was very. It was hard for her to give a compliment to her kids, but she was very proud of us in the same aspect when we weren't around. Maybe that was on purpose. Yeah, she was tough on us, but she, it's the old fight or flight. You got to learn how to fight back in life, or you got to learn how to run. So she really taught us a lot of grit on a personal note. I think on it comes to martial arts, I would say I've had some great coaches, some judo coaches that taught me a lot. Not just of skill, but a lot of life lessons. Charlie Formosa was my first instructor, and then also learned some lessons from a good friend of mine, Wayne Erdman, who was a U.S. Olympian, who really taught me how to be gritty and just a mental toughness that I couldn't even imagine that I developed over time, but at the time. He taught me a lot because he was just an elite athlete, a Canadian Olympian. And then Hiroshi Nakamura was my Japanese coach in Montreal. he had a big influence over me. And also my brothers, being brothers. Even my younger brother Glenn was an Olympian. He was a professional. If I could use any word to describe him, he didn't get paid because he was an amateur athlete in the Olympics, but everything he did, the way he approached everything, even though he's my younger brother, the way he approached the sport, I would say, you're not a professional just because you get paid in life. You're a professional in what you do by the way you approach what you do in life. And he was a pro just from the way he ate 4 hours before he trained, the way he prepared his even his mind before he went to practice, the way he practiced, the way he approached it. He was a machine, when it comes to just approaching, elite sports. And, a guy I follow today is Travis Stevens. He's American. He's a guy, a friend of mine, someone I know. Obviously a silver medalist in the Rio Olympics in judo. And he's a BJJ black belt under John Danaher, as everybody knows out there. But I always reading his Instagrams, and he has just some great posts about mental toughness and just his approach. And I highly recommend anybody that, if you want to learn some great lessons, to follow him on Instagram. But there's only a few great people out there that look at not just the skill set, because there's so much more to competing than just your skills. And that's, and like I said, one of the biggest things that's not taught, because a lot of black belts can't teach the mindset because they don't have it themselves. Can they teach you millions of moves? Yes, but there's only that few unique people that have that champion's mindset, that warrior spirit, and only a few people can teach you that, and you really need to be mentored at that, and that'll change your game if you can develop that. So those people, and certainly in jiu-jitsu, I would say my teacher today, my master in Brazil, which is, his name is Fabricio Mortens Costa. He's a red belt. He's a coral belt, a 7th degree. He's actually younger than me, but he's just not just the way he teaches jiu-jitsu, because he's one of the original masters in Brazil. It's just that he's got a lot of life lessons. He's taught me how to deal with people, how to deal with personalities you try to deal with. It's a combative sport. It's very competitive, but he brings to bear the human side of the sport, when it comes to helping others and giving back. And it's important to give back. Not a lot of people give back in life. They just take. And that's part of the corruption of our society, is that people are takers nowadays. They don't give back as much as they could, and as much as they should. And those are the kind of things I do as I get older and accomplish some things I've accomplished. That I try, and that makes me feel better than anything, giving back to people. If I can just teach one little lesson or one little thing where someone feels that they've gone away, not necessarily a skill that I've shown them, but also maybe a life lesson they can bring forward in the future and be better, because that makes me feel better than anything.
Mm-hmm. Well, it sounds like you've had some great influences in your life, shaping who you are and who you've become, and you in turn get a lot out of going full circle and influencing and impacting other lives. So well done. And I just want to say thank you for the opportunity for my listeners to get to know you better. You've got such a great history and knowledge base and a lot of experience that we can all draw from and learn from. So thank you for letting us know a little bit more about you, sir. And I wish you a long and healthy and happy life, Professor.
Thank you. Thanks for all the work you do on Gracie Jiu-Jitsu Rocks podcast. And, you're getting some great messages and great interviews and people that need to be heard, and maybe they don't have an opportunity to, but I appreciate all the work you do on behalf of the community.
Thank you, sir.
Cheers. Goodbye.
Cheers. Okay, really enjoyed that interview with Brian. And what a great person and interesting person he is. Stay tuned now for the Make a Difference, Make an Impact segment.
Instead of going around down on yourself, feeling unattractive, too tall, too short, not enough of this, too much of that, No, dare to get up in the morning and say, I am a masterpiece.
When you start your day, you must own your morning.
When you wake up in the morning, say thank you for grace. Thank you for mercy. Thank you for understanding. Thank you for wisdom. Thank you for parents. Thank you for love. Thank you for kindness. Thank you for humility. Thank you for peace. Thank you for prosperity. Say thank you in advance for what's already yours. It's how I live my life. One of the reasons why I am today.
Life doesn't really happen to you. Life really happens for you.
My question today is, what kind of I ams are coming out of your mouth? I am victorious. I am blessed. I am talented. I am anointed. Some of you, if you would just change the I am, you would go to a new level. I am strong. I am confident. I am equipped. I am more than a conqueror. I am well able. Make sure you have the right I ams coming out of your mouth.
Say thank you in advance for what is already yours. True desire in the heart, that itch that you have, whatever it is you want to do, that thing that you want to do to help others and to grow and to make money, that desire, that itch, that's God's proof to you, sent beforehand already to indicate that it's yours. And anything you want good, you can have.
Make a list of a dozen or two of these I ams. Read over them all through the day. Get them down in your spirit. Meditate on them. They may not all be true right now, but you have to call the things that are not as if they already were. I am prosperous. I am free. I am talented. I am young. I am beautiful. I am attractive.
What would be your perfect day? I mean, your ideal day, a day that you went to bed that night and you just thought that was the most incredible day. That's how I want most of my days in my life to be, just like that. What would that perfect day be like for you? Don't wait until the end of your life to have that ideal day. Don't wait until next year or next week to have that type of day. We can choose to wake up every single day and live that day in an idealistic way for ourselves, in a way in which we show up as who we want to be, in a way in which we are doing things that enliven us and engage us and get us excited, in a way that we're doing things and being with people and creating experiences that feel alive and fulfilling. We can have that type of life. I call it the charged life, and everybody can have it.
My encouragement is never say negative things about yourself. Most of us would never go up to another person, at least to their face, and criticize them. Yet we have no problem criticizing ourselves. I am so slow. I am so unattractive. I am so undisciplined. That is cursing your future. Do yourself a favor and zip that up. We have enough in life against us already. Don't be against yourself.
So, be a person of good, positive thinking. Be a person of good, positive action. And suddenly one day you'll wake up and you're like, I just feel amazing. I feel extraordinary. I feel positive. And that's what it feels like to live the charged life.
And that's going to do it for this edition of the show. As always, I thank you for listening. Hope you're enjoying the show. If you feel like you're benefiting from the show and want to show your support, you can support us on our Patreon page and a link in the show notes. Please like and follow us on social media and help us spread the word by reposting our posts and telling others about the show. You can leave comments on the website at www.gracejujitsurocks.com. You can also go to iTunes and leave comments as well as rate the show, and we would appreciate a 5-star rating, which helps us with our standing in iTunes. You can also leave comments on our YouTube channel. If you have suggestions for the show, please don't hesitate to give those. We always like feedback and suggestions. Okay, that's going to do it. So until next time, This is Marty Josie, and I'll see you on the mat.